It's a pleasure to have with us here today Dr. Michael Naughton. Dr. Naughton received his PhD in theology from Marquette University in 1991 and his MBA from the University of St. Thomas in 1995. He is currently the director of the Center for Catholic Studies at the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul. Dr. Naughton is the co-author and co-editor of 9 books and over 50 articles. He helped coordinate and write The Vocation of the Business Leader, issued by the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, which has been translated into 15 languages. His books include Respect in Action, Applying Subsidiarity in Business, and Managing as a Faith Matter. Dr. Naughton also serves as the board chair for Yale Precision Manufacturing, a global producer of innovative torque solutions for transportation, consumer electronics, medical, and office automation products, with offices in the U.S., the Netherlands, and China. He and his wife, Teresa, have 5 children, the 4th of whom, Eamon, is a member of today's graduating class. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Naughton.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton, for this kind invitation to speak this afternoon. And thank you to Dietrich. It's such an elegant, profound speech. Your wisdom is beyond your age, Dietrich. Well done. Well done. I would especially like to express my deep gratitude to the faculty and staff of Trinity School, who contribute to provide a powerful Christian classical education to these graduates. My wife, Teresa, and I have been parents for the past 16 years of 4 Trinity students. And we've had the great pleasure to get to know the faculty and staff here. Our experience has confirmed time and time again these people are very extremely committed and thoughtful and who exhibit a very unique virtue of intellectual charity. By intellectual charity, I mean not just people who are kind and generous, but faculty and staff who have a profound sense of the responsibility to engage their students in freedom in the pursuit of truth. This is a great act of love in education, an act that we saw in a special way last night at the senior banquet, and the faculty lovingly honored these students. You graduates have been given a great gift. And so please join me in thanking your faculty and staff whose commitment to truth and goodness and beauty have created the conditions for an education that is so desperately needed in our world today. Thank you, faculty. Graduates, I'd like to speak to you on 3 interdependent points this afternoon, which I hope captures, however simply, the purpose of your education here at Trinity. These 3 interrelated points can be summarized as 3 ends of knowing. Know thyself, know the good, know God. My first point, know thyself. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a blue-collar neighborhood, a rather difficult time in the Chicago area at that time. And one of the more dramatic moments of my life as a teenager occurred one Saturday night when 4 other teenagers decided to take some punches and kicks upon my body. I was jumped, and I was actually jumped right in front of the Catholic church that we attended. By the way, I'm not quite sure if you can see, but for some odd reason you might think that that fight occurred yesterday with the glass of my arm fell off just yesterday. So it was great timing. I couldn't get it fixed. But anyhow, the next morning, when our family went to church, I saw one of my siblings. And I was so filled with self-righteous anger. When I got home that morning, I told my parents that I was never, ever going into that church or any other Catholic church ever again with so many hypocrites in it. And my mother, who was from Ireland, responded as only a mother can tell her son, Michael, Michael, there's always room for one more hypocrite, you know. Now, this was not what I wanted to hear. I was the victim. I was the peace-loving kid. I was the person who wouldn't hurt a fly. And yet, unfortunately, I was, and unfortunately still am, a hypocrite. What my mother wanted me to see was a very important lesson in coming to know myself. When we think of sin or hypocrisy, our first thought should be ourselves. We, of course, would prefer to think of other people's failings. The greedy business person, the pompous professor, corrupt politicians, cliquey and self-absorbed teenagers. Focusing on other people's sins instead of our own is a very comfortable place to be, since it demands little change from ourselves. It allows us to keep our sins secret, private, and unacknowledged. But as Father Kevin Lesa, the papal household preacher, once said, hypocrisy is perhaps the most widespread human vice and the least confessed. When a journalist asked the Pope, "Who is Pope Francis?" his response was simple and clear: "I am a sinner." This is not an easy insight to honestly grapple with in coming to know ourselves. But we discover it not because of how corrupt we are, but because of how good we are created to be. Your education at Trinity is centered in an understanding that there is a created order to the world that points to who we are meant to be. This is why, as this school clearly recognizes, truth matters. We are not on this earth by mere chance. You and I are on a great adventure that transcends our petty concerns and calls us to great nobility and virtue that is a shared good and not merely a private one. I love the way Dietrich put it: to carry the fire, to carry the fire. Your education has been an encounter with this adventure, and it is meant to reveal to you the gap between who you've been created to be and who you are actually right now. David Brooks, who is a popular cultural commentator, wrote a book last year called The Road to Character. It's a wonderful book about knowing thyself. And one of the chapters is devoted to Augustine, focusing on one of the books she read in junior year Maine, the Confessions. As you know, Augustine spent much of his life struggling with lust and ambition, two struggles that are alive and well today. In his book, Brooks is particularly taken by Augustine's confrontation with his own ambition, both because it reveals the problems of the culture of meritocracy we find ourselves in, and it uncovered for Brooks his own false self hidden behind his own worldly achievements. Both Brooks and Augustine warn us of defining ourselves only through our achievements. When you come back for your 10-year high school reunion, you will be asked, "So, what do you do?" And behind that is, "What have you achieved?" I do hope that many of you will have great achievements, for achievements are important, but they can too often conceal rather than reveal the deeper self. We come to the profound sense of ourselves not merely through what we do, but through what we accept, not through what we achieve, but through what we receive. This is precisely what a Trinity education is about: the fostering of a contemplative outlook to receive the world. This is found in scientific inquiry, resulting in wonder, leading someone like Einstein to remark, "The most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it is comprehensible," where mathematical formulas reveal the beauty and the order of a cosmos that is not self-created, but received, where literature uncovers the image of God's love in the other, and music and art orients us to a transcendent place of harmony and order. And here we might want to formulate a principle of self-knowledge. if you and I don't get receiving right, we don't get this contemplative outlook right, which is the basis of any good education, we will never get achieving right. It is precisely this acceptance, this receptivity, this wonder that moves us to the deeper self-knowledge that no achievement by itself can give. This road to knowing thyself brings me to my second point. And it also brings me to a drink. For to know ourselves, we have to know the good. Yet to know the good is also not an easy task. When I was a bit younger than you, I was walking out of the house one Saturday night. By the way, bad things seem to happen to me on Saturday night somehow. But I was walking out, my father, who was also from Ireland, said to me, he said, Michael, you'll be a good boy, Michael. I said, sure, Dad. And before I could take another step, he looks at me and says, but Mike, if you can't be good, you be careful. Well, an unfortunate event happened to me that evening, and I'll spare you the details, but my father had to pick me up from the Chicago police station. He walked into the police station, and he said, Michael, I think you better just be good. Now, we live in a culture that has tended to lose sight of the good, fixating itself on simply being careful. We have designated drivers, safe and careful drivers, who take home drunk and stupid friends. We have a thing called safe sex, somehow thinking that non-productive, disease-free intercourse will somehow replace its unitive and procreative meaning. We have an educational system that fixates on right grades and test scores and checking all the boxes to get to the next step. But in the process, we have produced a generation of students who have lost the love of learning. And we have career strategies that calculate the effects of our actions in climbing the proverbial ladder of success, but unfortunately, we've lost the idea of what it means to have good work. There is a good chance that as many of you go off to college this fall, you will be drawn to this temptation to only being careful, what some have called a utilitarian mindset, where all things are seen as merely useful or utility-driven. I hope you can remember a very simple principle that comes from a very great thinker, John Henry Newman. And he says this: the good is always useful, but the useful is not always good. While your education at Trinity is useful, giving you the knowledge and skills to succeed in life, this utility does not define its center. Your education, at its core, has developed a habit of wonder, an ability to be constantly surprised and astonished and perplexed, that can move you to see things in relationship to each other. And in fact, this kind of education will benefit you in most any career you enter. But once you think that this education only in terms of grades to get to the next step, to be used as simply a means of career, it will fail you and you will fail it. This is why John Henry Newman insisted that a person trained narrowly in only one field is not competent even in that one, for he or she often will lack the recognition of where the specialized knowledge of law, finance, engineering, politics, or science, where they apply and where they do not. And it is precisely here that we have witnessed some of the major disorders in our society, caused in part by a university education that fails to see things whole. Alistair McIntyre, one of the great philosophers of our day, argues that these disorders have been brought about by some of the most distinguished graduates of some of the most distinguished universities in the world. McIntyre gives as examples of these disorders the following: the Vietnam and Iraq wars, the American policy toward Iran that produced the Iranian hostage crisis, and more recently, in 2008, the financial crisis. Whatever the merits of the specific examples, and we can certainly have disagreement over them. The larger point, when we prepare graduates to be simply careful, to be only specialists in their field, to think only instrumentally with no philosophical or theological root system, the result is a narrow education that creates specialists without spirit, politicians without heart, business people without principle, all of which fails and leads to the failure of knowing what the good is. This failure is that when we think in only instrumental terms, only to achieve what is useful to us, we create very small worlds for ourselves. Again, in the Confessions, Augustine writes the following: "The house of my soul is too small for you to come to it. May it be enlarged by you." One of the biggest challenges of our life is that we can create such small worlds, so small in fact, that it's hard for God to interact and enter into those lives. What your Trinity education has provided is a different kind of rationality that seeks to catch glimpses into the unity of things, to see things in relationship to each other, all of which enlarges our souls to receive the good as well as truth and beauty of this world and the next. And so this brings me to my third and final point, and hopefully my third and final break. And it is about to know God. For we cannot know ourselves or the depths of the good without knowing God. I had the opportunity to meet Mother Teresa twice in my life, and once was in Calcutta, India. And I was giving a talk at the Indian Institute of Management, and my host, who is Hindu, said to me when I was there, he knew I was Catholic, and he said to me, "Would you like to go meet Mother Teresa?" I said, "Sure." So we got into a cab, we went down to the Mother House, we walk in, and there's Mother Teresa. And my Hindu friend drops to his knees, and he's trying to kiss Mother Teresa's feet. And Mother Teresa's trying to pick him up, and he's trying to kiss the feet, and there's this wrestling match going on. And honest to goodness, the only thought that came to my mind in this kind of wonderful meeting that I was finding myself in was, man, she has big feet. God, is she short? Boy, is she old? And can't you think of something more profound? I mean, here I am sitting in the front of the icon of holiness, and all I can think about were feet. Well, we had about a 20-minute conversation, and as we were leaving, Mother Teresa looked at us and she says, "I want to give you my business card." There's no fax number on it, no telephone number on it, but this quote, and it was this: "The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. The fruit of service is peace." What made Mother Teresa such a beautiful woman was her openness to God. For it was Christ who chose her, and she began her days by following the advice of her own business card. She would turn to him in interior silence that turned to powerful prayer. It gave her great faith and an extraordinary capacity to love and serve others, not just once in a while, but on a habitual basis, with deep peace, that she was to be right where she was and not somewhere else. Mother Teresa's witness, along with many holy men and women throughout history, confronts a particular temptation that we face in modern life. Namely, we lose touch with God's call, that we aren't His chosen ones, and instead we tend to simply focus on our own choices. We have, unfortunately, come to see our choice, and not the content of the choice, as the highest value. Mother Teresa's business card, and not unlike your Trinity education, reminds you that your choices only make sense in terms of what you have been chosen for in this world. and without a deep sense of being chosen, of the recognition that God has a plan for each one of us in this auditorium, our choice will not free us, but rather empty us of any meaning or significance. This is captured by the English novelist and poet D.H. Lawrence, who wrote, Men are not free when they are doing just what they like. The moment you do what you like, there's nothing you care about doing. We are called then to know God in His creation, in His Word and Sacrament, that enables us to make choices that reflect what we have been chosen for. We are free when we are obeying the deep inward voice of God's call, not when we're escaping to some wild west. It is the truth that sets us free, the truth that is most profoundly expressed in God's love for us. You caught glimpses of this love in the last book you read in Humane, in Dostoevsky's which we call The Brothers K. You wrestled with Christ's kiss, that kiss of God's love, creating a glow even in the heart of the corrupt Grand Inquisitor. While the Cardinal holds hard to his ideas, his cold, instrumental rationality, his choice, his disordered reason, he is nonetheless still loved by Christ, a love that burns in his heart, leading hope even for the debased Grand Inquisitor. For at the heart of our faith, this source that gives us knowledge of God is not a theory, it's not even an ethic, but a person whose deep and inexhaustible love has the capacity to transform us and the communities we live in. It is this love that reveals to us the most profound ways the three ends of knowing I have been trying to express to you this afternoon. To know thyself, to know the good, and to know God. So students, let me conclude. A colleague of mine once told me that at the end of the day, there are two kinds of people. There are those who are grateful, and there are those who are resentful. Those who are resentful often have a sense that what they get out of life is what they put into it, which is why often they find themselves resentful at the end of their lives. They are resentful that others have not come their own way, or they are resentful that they've been cheated from getting more. But those who are grateful, however, have a profound sense that they have been given much, and because of this gift and this logic, they accept that they are asked to give much. Those who are grateful often have the same set of problems, conflicts, and disappointments, but they find even within their suffering a gift that does not embitter them, but creates even greater compassion and love for the other. Graduates of 2016, you have been given much. I hope on this day of celebration and beyond, you will express your gratitude to your teachers, staffs, and coaches, and most especially your mothers and your fathers, grandmothers and grandmothers, grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters. They have given you more than you know. And above all, graduates, thank God, the giver and source of all life. Take time today and every day and disconnect yourself from screens and earbuds and humbly put yourself before the Lord, who will bless and guide you on all your endeavors. Thank you, and God bless the graduates of 2016. And by the way, God bless the track team later today.